Hello, this is Channing from the Honolulu Go Club. I started Go because my friend really wanted to play for a really long time. He had watched Hikaru no Go, and so he really wanted to play. He bugged me for probably years until I finally relented and started playing with him. And it was really fun. As for what I love most about Go, I think it's the simplicity of learning the rules. It takes a few times, but it's pretty easy to pick up. But that gives way to the absolute depth of the game and just how complicated it truly is. And it's really interesting. I myself am only like 16Q or something, so I still have a long way to go. But yeah, it's just really interesting.
As I was preparing for season 3 and the different subjects I wanted to cover, one of them was psychology. It felt like there were so many connections between Go and psychology, not only what your psychology is when you're playing the game, but also other things. And so I did reach out on Reddit. I asked the community, hey, does anybody have a background in psychology and they are also a Go player? And would you possibly like to connect and chat? And so Timothy Tamim reached out to me and said, hey, I do have some background. I have my master's in psychology and I have a background in psychoanalysis, and I would love to chat. We eventually were able to connect. I had just welcomed our second child into the world, and so we weren't able to connect as quickly as we wanted to. But I talked to him and it was incredibly refreshing. And I wasn't expecting to go where we went in the conversation. And I think you'll also find this a little bit different and I think refreshing. Timothy has, again, that background in psychology, but also he is a very heavy thinker on gaming. He does content creation for other games. He is a writer. And so I think just an incredibly articulate person about these really fun and sort of different concepts that I don't think we talk about regularly. And so I went into it with one thing and I came out with a completely different thing. And I'm so glad that it happened. And I think you'll enjoy it. So let's jump right into my conversation with Timothy Tamim. Timothy, maybe you can first just give us a little bit of a background as it relates to psychology and with Go.
So I was trained in France as a clinical psychologist. I took the path of psychoanalysis. So it's, let's say, a practical and a theoretical direction of psychology. It's oddly difficult to define, actually, but yeah, it's basically the continuation of what Freud started. And so I worked as a psychologist in hospitals, in various wards. I worked in cancer wards. I worked in wards for children. I worked in psychiatric wards, all in France. And in some particular instances, mostly as an intern, but I've also done this in other settings, I've incorporated Go both mentally for myself. There are many teachings from Go that I've been able to transfer to psychoanalysis and vice versa. Many of the phenomena that you encounter in psychoanalysis personally are things that you're going to be able to reflect in your Go playing. And also practically with some patients, I've actually, brought a board and used Go as a mediating tool.
What was that experience like bringing it into the psychiatric ward or those sorts of things? How was it received? What benefits did you find there?
So I can't say that I use it as a diagnostic tool because I don't think, in terms of diagnosis, this is mostly the realm of psychiatry, of the medical part of psychiatry. I think more in terms of development with the patient and what kind of work you can do with a patient. But there was a way that the Go board projected a focal area of the patient's mental inner workings, in particular with regard to their perceptions of self and the way they organized their thought processes, not necessarily conscious, also unconscious thought processes. This is probably the most prominent thing that I could see with Go was playing, for example, with a schizophrenic patient. I gotta say, we didn't play Go. We played Atari Go. I brought the
Sure,
board,
sure.
and the point wasn't to train 5 down players. The point was Use it as a mediating tool. So Atari Go is the simplest form. But schizophrenic patients would very, very frequently project onto the board their fragmented image of self. So like schizophrenic patients typically don't experience themselves as a whole, as a unified, enveloped within a boundary and a body whole person. And this is very reflected in the moves that they play. They're going to like, cut everywhere, but they won't necessarily experience it as cutting. They'll experience this as the absolute normalcy of how bodies interact with each other. Bodies flow into each other, flow out of each other. Whereas someone else who's not in a, let's say, schizophrenic position, they might feel, for example, a rush of adrenaline when you cut. They'll, oh my God, you separated me in half. I'm going to have to, figure out how to make those two halves work. And maybe you're separated too. For the schizophrenic patient, this is absolutely normal.
So it's a very stark expression of the visual output of somebody in a very different mental state.
Yeah. You know about the ink blot tests, huh? That's
Yes,
sometimes
Rorschach
ink blot
test. Yep.
tests in Rorschach in various film and media. That's not always very accurately represented, but you can consider the Go board, the empty Go board, as a sort of a Rorschach test in the sense that the patient projects inner workings of themselves onto it. To give another example, a person who's got, for example, paranoid delusions, who feels persecuted by, I don't know, some delusion, the CIA is after them, or
Whatever it
the
might be,
government
right?
wants to take them for experiments, things like this. Paranoid patients will project that sort of fear of being invaded onto the Go board in the form of very, very solid shapes. In contrast, for example, with a schizophrenic patient or a more histrionic patient that's going to be more expressive and go towards you and try to, clash with you, they're going to be more retreated. So all of these things, you can really see not only how they function for individual people, but also the board gives you a medium through which to work through these issues. I'm not going to say that, oh, miracle, I brought the Go board and now they're healed. They're no longer
They're all
schizophrenic.
better, right?
This is out of the question. But rather than talk about the patient in a conversation that, for example, they might not have access to, either because it's too unconscious or because they don't really want to, in the setting of a hospital, patients don't necessarily want to do traditional therapy with you. It's not the same as like when you have a patient come to you as a practitioner, as a private practitioner. So they're not necessarily very inclined, all of them, to talk about these issues. You can use the Go board as a sort of hand talk, right? Hand talk is one of the names of Go in Asian languages. And you can have this conversation on the board. It's not just a diagnostic, quote unquote, tool. You can go, oh, do you see that you're separated in half here? You can verbalize it. You don't have to verbalize it, but you could verbalize it. And the patient might go, oh, I hadn't noticed. Yeah, wow. And they're going to then try mentally to form a sort of total image or constituted image. This retroacts upon their thought processes. They themselves start thinking of themselves as a whole that they should keep whole and that they should keep protected, or vice versa, with all the other examples I gave. You can say, oh, don't you feel like you're a bit too scared of me here? Nothing's going to happen to you. They're not going to go, oh, yes, you're right. I'm going to, okay, fine. I'm fine now. No, but they're going to formulate that and validate that through their moves and through the meaning that they impart onto their moves. I think this is the important point. It's not so much about verbalizing what they're doing as the meaning that their moves produces for them.
Did you find that this sort of indirect way made them a little bit, how do I say, their guard was down a little bit more?
I wouldn't say guard was down because it would imply somehow that I'm trying to, get their guard down.
Yeah, for a purpose, right?
But in fact, it is their fantasy. Their fantasy is that you're trying to invade them. You're trying to invade their mind. You're trying to see through them. And when you start playing a game, it's not so much the guard that gets down than that fantasy that collapses a little bit. And they start feeling, oh, okay, we're not here so that I can be measured. We're here to play together. And I think this is very, very important from the point of view of a psychologist and a clinician. You're not there to see through the patient. Nothing's going to work if you try to do that. You are there to play with them, to play with meanings, to play with their symptoms, to play with their ideas of their suffering. You're here to help them play, but to play, you need two people. I mean, some games, solitaire, you can play alone, but this sort of relational work is a two-people game. Many psychoanalysts have written a lot about playing, I remember one of my teachers, actually, he was telling me that he had one of his patients, a child. And usually this is what you do with children. You play, you've got, Legos or cubes or whatever,
Sure.
or more representational things like, I don't know, little dinosaurs, little policemen, police cars. You play. And the teacher told us that, yeah, this child asked them, oh, so what's your real job? And the guy said, well, this is my job. It's to play with you.
Right.
And the kid says, "Oh my God, I want to do that when I'm grown up. Your job is to play. This is the best job in the world." But yeah, this is it. The job is to play. So Go lends itself as a medium to use with patients.
What are some of the ways that you think about psychoanalysis, Freud, and the ways that Go can be somewhat of a window into those things? Is it more to do with the expression of unconscious underlying things inside your mind? Is it other things? Can you expound on that a little bit?
So what Freud discovered or invented, it's a bit contentious, is that there's meaning beyond what we consciously have access to in what we do, in our ways of thinking about ourselves, and that's not just a subconscious after effect, that's actually as if one had a second mind within one's mind that has a working of its own, and that you can explore this was Freud's idea through things like Freudian slips. When you say a word, but you meant to say another, this is, revealing something of that unconscious mind through dreams, through mistakes, through, I don't know, forgetting that you had an appointment. Maybe that, that means you didn't
Sure.
really want to go to the appointment. Things
Right,
like
right.
in Go, you can really see that, for example, through mistakes people make. People will make mistakes that reveal the way they think about themselves, or, at least make certain classes of moves that reveal things that they think about themselves. But also in Go is not just a very free form game, right? There's a measurement of success at the end of the game. Someone wins, someone loses. Psychoanalysis is a lot more free. I think this is probably the biggest distinction between psychoanalysis and Go as spiritual practices. One kind of has a goal that's measurable in terms of quality and, success. The other is a lot more free form, and it's more about the journey, and wherever you end up is where you are going to end up anyway. But still, in Go, people will learn about certain moves. They'll learn about the joseki. They'll go, okay, this is the way you're supposed to do it. They'll learn it 5 times, 6 times. Maybe they'll have a teacher who's going to teach them. And then they play, and they cannot reproduce what they learned, but they know it. After the game, when you do the game review, you say, well, didn't you learn this, joseki? You know this is wrong. And the person will say, oh, yeah, I don't know why I forgot. Well, there's going to be something very revealing about themselves in the why I forgot. There's something that repeats itself in the way they play, that repeats itself in the types of mistakes that they make, in the styles. It's not so much the style, it's more the sorts of conundrums that they fall into, or that they drive themselves into. You see, this is the difference in the unconscious. It's that a person will feel like, it's weird. I always feel like my games end up like this. But in the unconscious, this is very deliberate. The person thwarts themselves into these situations that will perhaps relate to some personality aspect or some repressed memories or something, or simply just a more global way of thinking about themselves. And I can give a personal example of this myself. So my playing style in Go has really changed a lot depending on periods of time in my life, and also the teachers that I've had. But for the longest period of time before I started getting a teacher, I would play very proper moves, follow the way that you're supposed to follow, not a lot of creativity, very defensive. And what ends up on the board is that you're very defensive. You take all the points here and there, and then suddenly the opponent has this huge moyo. You think you're way behind. You're not, because the moyo is invadable. You can go in. But it appears visually that you have these limited points here and there in the corners and on the sides and stuff. And then your opponent has this huge potential, and they're going to score 200 points, and you start panicking. A good player will be able to measure whether you should be panicking or whether it's okay. Just you reduce here and there, and it's going to be even at the end of the day. Not being a very good player, I would just tend to panic instinctively.
You and me both.
Yeah. And I just stick a stone in there, And then the game would inevitably become the opponent chasing me in very hostile territory. And whether I win or lose would simply be determined on the success of that endeavor. Can my, invading stone escape or live? Usually no. Or does he kill it? Usually yes. And you could get any teacher in the world, any pro, any whatever, to tell me, oh, you don't need to. You can just, reduce and it's going to be fine. I wouldn't be able to. I'd still find myself in that situation, even though I didn't feel like I was doing it on purpose. And at the time, I was undergoing my own personal psychoanalysis. On the way to becoming a psychoanalyst, you also have to experience what it's like on the other end, and you explore your own personality, your own memories, and your own life. And there was a point in my psychoanalysis where I was very much working on my issues with my father, who, was in my unconscious mind, a very scary figure, very authoritative figure. And I would have dreams, for example, where I was chased by my father. And as I was talking about those dreams and those things, I wasn't thinking about Go necessarily. But during that period, which was like, I don't know, 2 weeks that I was very focused on these aspects of myself, suddenly my Go changed. And I wasn't finding myself in those situations. And I went, that's weird. Nothing really changed. I didn't take a lesson. I didn't practice anything. And I made the connection and I thought, oh yeah, I was always being chased by my opponent the way I was in my unconscious fantasy being chased by my father. And once that fantasy collapses, you also stop repeating that pattern in your games.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's one of the very intimate connections between Go and psychoanalysis that are for me very important. It's not so much a reflection of your skill, it's a reflection of your mind state, your emotional state, let's say.
It reminds me of some of the theories talking about when you as a human being say, oh, something happens out in the world, that thing happens, I absorb it through my senses, and then I feel a way about it. I feel upset, I feel happy, I feel sad. And that a lot of theory now goes to, okay, that might be happening, but it actually might be happening in reverse. And in the same way, instead of us thinking, oh, I'm going to impose upon the board some conscious thought about where to play, that there's also all these things that are happening that are affecting our psyche and our minds and our lives that actually, without you realizing it, will express themselves into the board. And the way I see it in humans is they say, hey, you might actually have some, I don't know, pain in your stomach or something happens with your blood pressure. And then next thing you know, you're upset, but you had no connection. You didn't make any connection between that bodily function and that emotion. And I love how you're tying that back to, in a way, it sounds like Go is almost a reflection of the fact that there are things you aren't even thinking about that will change, will show that change from other parts of your life.
Absolutely. I think in Go, one of the things I most appreciated when I started playing Go, I started, what was it, around 2016, huh? I arrived to Go in the same time as AlphaGo. Obviously had effects on the way I was learning it. But what I most appreciated was this culture of reviewing the game after. And in the social culture of Go, when you review the game, sometimes some people are very preposterous and rude to you, but mostly it's about white did this and black did this. This is how you refer to what happened in the game. You don't say you did this, I did this, you should have done that. It says, oh, black did this, and so black became in a very tight spot and white has more points. So it implies that when you're playing the game, you are embodying one of two quasi-symmetrical forces. You're embodying black in this like eternal battle between black and white, between yin and yang. What's expressing itself when you're playing is not so much, as we said earlier, your conscious intention. It's something that's passing through you. It's an energy that you're embodying that's passing through you and that expresses itself on the board, let's say, to the degree that you let it flow through you without imposing barriers on it. So this is, I think, what happens a lot when people get a teacher for the first time, for example. The teacher is going to say, well, you're trying to do something, but you're blocking the flow. Just let the flow happen. Let it happen. The opponent wants this side. Okay, they put the stone there, so you can't do anything now. But you get the other side very naturally. When you let those forces flow, when you let that interplay between the white and the black and the yin and the yang, you let that flow, that's when you get the best game, both in terms of win and in terms of how enjoyable it is. The ego is not so much something that you should try and at least in Go, let's say, but also, in my experience in psychoanalysis, it's not something that you should try and empower, and you should let it lay there, and you should try and let it not obstruct the passage of forces that are beyond us.
I play a game and a move is played by the opponent, and I'm trying to surround a territory on a part of the board. And like you say, they obstruct that. They play a piece right on the border of that area. And the biggest challenge I have, to your point, is going into that psychological state of panic where I say, no, this was my grand plan. I was going to take this part of the board. They've ruined it. And it seems like the mark of a more experienced player is saying, the flow of the game has now shifted. It's gone this way. And a lot of times it feels like I can't see where it flowed to, right? It almost feels like I'm in like a cave and there's water filling up and the water's escaping somewhere out of the cave, but it's changed and I can't see where it's going.
What's very interesting in this story is there's a passage that's in Go learning and your evolution as a player. There's a passage between that state where the player is only able to see determinate areas that they're trying to draw and realize. From there to get to another state where it's more, I can trust that points are naturally going to appear from the flow of the game. What's interesting about that passage is you can't skip that first step. You first have to represent yourself by this sort of ego playing, this sort of representing yourself on the board in terms of blocking forces, in terms of trying to realize the potential that you see. You need that step before you can get to the next step, which is forgetting that. And so it's a very, very interesting thing in Go. The deeper you go, the more you have to forget the things that you learned in order to produce a higher level of skill. But you can't forget those things before you learn them. So it's as if you're learning wrong things, but you have to learn the wrong things because it's in the act of forgetting those wrong things that you produce a step forward.
It almost makes you wonder if you're talking about that example you gave for your style, where you would get to a point where there'd be a huge moil by the opponent and then you would have to invade, and that whole process happened. This is where I find there is a very strangely social aspect to Go, and I'd love your thoughts on it, because a teacher that has a much higher level of knowledge about the game will see things that I don't see. And even if the AI will spot a 15-point loss move, the teacher might notice a spot earlier in the game where I will set myself up to have to deal with a moyo. Can you speak to that? What's your reaction to that?
I have two things that come to mind immediately. It's one, the social aspect of Go. I can relate this to something you said earlier, which is trying to find balance. And I think that in Go, you don't have to try and find balance because you're not trying to balance something within yourself that's black and white. You're black or white, and the other person in the game is the other color. So balance is hopefully naturally going to emerge from you both players letting the interplay of the forces flow.
Well, there's a couple impediments to that. There could be obviously rank level, which the nice thing about Go is you can do handicapping, you can do adding of points or a komi onto it. But let's just say for a moment that there's two players that are actually fairly equal in ability. This is the point at which you could say, hey, you really need to let that flow happen between opponents, or can it be something different?
What I'm trying to express, we're talking about the game in such, philosophical high terms. I love this. This is really good. I think of it, how to say, you said earlier something about the aesthetics of the game, and the highest level players being people who can achieve that vision. So I was a student of Hwang In-sung, a Dan, and I remember one of his classes on a joseki. It was an insane joseki, insane. There's like a
avalanche, joseki, or flying daggers or something.
Counter throw in, and then there's it's something crazy. I was
very complicated
because it was like Go is a comedy. Go is not just a game. It's hilarious. And the result that came, I remember In-sung describing it as a beautiful flower. And he elaborated a little bit on that, but not too much. So the way I elaborated on it personally is it's like the process of evolution. There's an evolution that happens from the interplay of two reasonably balanced forces, but what tips The balance is that you don't play at the same time. You play each in turn. So someone's necessarily going to play the first move in a joseki, and then the balance is not 50-50. Globally, maybe, but even then, globally, black plays the first move on the board. So I think that what happens on the board, the chaos that sprawls across the board, is simply a result of that. There is one player that plays the first move. That's the only reason that there's such variety, I think.
I've always found it interesting the way that some of the cultures from which Go really originated, right? Korea, China, Japan, they do use these terms that really I find interesting, like saying it's beautiful, like a flower, or in Korean, hangma, this concept of flow, like what you're talking about. On the one hand, I love it and I like it and I want to fall into it, the aesthetically pleasing aspects. And on the other hand, sometimes I feel like, is it my Western brain? I don't know what it is. I have a hard time getting my head wrapped around what makes it beautiful, because it's not a term that I would necessarily use up front. What's your sense as someone who is very much engaged in not only psychology, but writing, but also other forms of games?
What I really, really like about games is that there's a right way to play. There's the right move. If you play a game of Go, you can make a mistake. If you play a video game, I don't know, any video game, StarCraft has been compared to Go a lot. I think rightfully so, both in terms of its mechanics and also the culture that it sprung from, because StarCraft esports took prominence in Korea at a time
Right. Okay.
Go as the competitive form of gaming was declining in Korea. You can make a variety of right moves, but you can also make a variety of wrong moves. What I enjoy about games is that you can see within a framework of rules, what is the range of correct results that's supposed to emerge from there. I personally see beauty there. I see beauty in the formation of some sort of perfect sequence or perfect result that can emerge. And what I love about chaotic games like Go is that you can never get there because it's too complex. But you're always trying to approach this sort of and this is what you do when you review a game of Go. You're trying to approach, this is how it should have gone. This is what we missed out on. I think that's what he meant in Song when he said the Joseki is a beautiful flower. It's not just an interplay, it's a conflict of forces, and those forces tend to force each other into a certain configuration. And that resulting configuration, to me, is conceptually beautiful. And when I see it visually, I see the beauty in that. I see this is the form that these rules take when they're played to the highest level of quality.
With all that being said, one thing that I think you're touching on too is this concept that sometimes there's only one right move, depending on the stage of the game, but also a lot of times there are 5 or 10 or 15 good moves, very good moves. So how do you think this psychology, psychoanalytic side of things comes into play when you see different styles? I guess you've already touched on this a bit in terms of how your style changed in a few different ways, but perhaps it's self-evident in kind of what you've already expressed so far, this concept that you can have many different styles. They can all work, but some of them are uncomfortable for certain people. Like I played the other day, one of the harder games I've played because the other person's style was so aggressive. Every time I laid a stow down, it's like they were attaching to me or something. And so it was stressful. I mean, I could literally feel the stress going on. Whereas like you were saying, maybe if it's that schizophrenic patient maybe sees things as innately fractured, they might not feel any stress at all.
What do you think your opponent from that game enjoyed?
Well,
Where's
they
their
literally, we started the game and they played a 5-3 point. No, a 5-4 point, right? So they played a less common opening, and I think I invaded. I think I played inside of that because I just didn't know how to handle it. And the opponent wrote in the chat and they said, "Finally." And so I said, "Laugh out loud. I like the 5-4s. I've never tried it before." And then he said, "I play mostly on influence and I like to hunt invading stones and I hope for diagonal corners." So it was just, this
That's
person told me pretty explicitly what they were looking for.
I like to hunt. I like to
Yeah.
hunt. This is what I was trying to pick out, and the story is perfect because it went exactly where I thought it was going.
Okay. Yeah.
You were talking about your discomfort and your stress,
Totally.
but that's what they enjoy.
Exactly.
They
But do you
enjoy
think they
being
enjoy
challenged,
my discomfort or they
under
just enjoy the
under
chaos?
prey, yeah. Maybe, but I'm trying to more specifically pinpoint the social enjoyment, the
Mhm.
enjoyment with regard to the relationship that's created with you.
And it was something that I almost felt like we played one game. I didn't slow down. Again, this psychological aspect of the game, right? Of slowing down, even though it was a correspondence game. I had all the time in the world. But I felt that sense of rush, that sense of I have to, right? Because they're playing right back at me. And then I slip up. I make a mistake. And, I could have won by 50 points, but, I missed it. And there's something about Go players where sometimes they see this as a mirror to the self and they say, wait a second, if this is about self-improvement and getting better at the game, I want to lean into it. And I'm not saying that I did a great job at that, but I played it and I said, I want to play this person again. And so I played them again and it did, it happened to go better the second game, but I had to focus so hard at every stage of the game because they were aggressive at every moment of that game.
That
Good point.
description that you gave, I would say that in the first game, you were not mirroring yourself, you were mirroring their self. You get sucked into their enjoyment and you become this sort of like puppet of their own game. And I think there's this compulsion when you said, I want to play them again, because you didn't play, you played their game, and now you want to play a game where you get to play also.
And I think there's something that you can turn, though, to a positive in that, because you can say, oh, wow, this is a completely different way than I would play. And if I could just say, hey, I can learn from this, that's the way you improve, right?
I started going to a Go club in Paris when I was about, 15Q, something like this. And there was this old Japanese guy in the corner called Masumi. Half his face is burned, is scarred from a burn that I never learned where it came.
Why?
But he has this very impressive stature, and he was always very early to the Go club. He would leave quite soon. When I started playing with him and becoming friends with him, I would go as early as possible. He would drink a lot, just drink a lot. In France, most Go clubs are in bars. I don't know how it is in other countries, but yeah, a lot of Go clubs are held in bars, and he would drink a lot. And one day I don't know, someone pushed me to go ask him for a game, and I said, okay, excuse me, Masumi, may I play a game with you? Yes, of course, this very serious stature, but he's a very impressive guy. And then as I became a bit closer to him and started to know him a bit, I found out he was an absolute nutcase, like me. We were the two nutcases in the Go club. I would get as early as possible to the Go club. He'd start drinking. I don't need to drink to be a crazy person. I can be a crazy person on my own. And we would sing very loudly old French songs, and I would, throw interjections in Japanese, not that I speak proper Japanese,
Okay.
I picked up from anime, and he would make fun of my Japanese. We had a lot of fun. And this was one of the things I did. He played moves on me. I noted them in my brain for the next time. And I said, this is what he did to me. I'll do that to him next time. And so I'd come the next time and, thinking I was very, very clever. I prepared the counter to the move, so he gets into the situation I was in, and I play the move he played to me last week. And then he would always respond very naturally and easily and thwart my idea that I was going to dominate him. And so what was happening is he was showing me how I should have responded last week to what he did. And there was a sort of game that threaded many games, a sort of meta game where we would be deferring each other's plays, where he would be teaching me what the next move was without necessarily wanting to or meaning to. But I learned a lot from that. I learned a lot from identifying with the position of the other. And I think that's where we were on the discussion with your opponent, that you wanted to sort of like emulate something because that's how you learn. Yeah, you learn not only from developing your own style, but you learn from like picking into the other person's style, picking into the other person's moves, but deeper than that, picking into the other person's form, picking into the other person's mental patterns and how they envision the game and what would bother them. Because ultimately, I think this is something that we lost with AI. With AI, we're trying to play this sort of like objectively best move. But when you're playing a game against someone, you don't really have to play the objectively best move. You should just play the move that bothers them. If you just keep bothering your opponent, you win.
That's an interesting concept. Could you play a bunch of moves that irritates the opponent so much? I do find, though, that sometimes, like with that opponent that was incredibly aggressive, they were playing moves that were bothering me. But then it did reach this inflection point, this moment where it was almost a house of cards. It could all come tumbling down for them. And they get away with it because my psychological state is not where it needs to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You should play bad moves to bother them. But if someone tells
Yeah.
me before we play a game, if someone tells me, oh, I really don't like fighting, I go, oh, okay, good. And then we start the game. They play the 4-4, I play the other 4-4, whatever. I'm going to attach immediately to their
Right.
first move. Let's start a fight. Let's go. You don't like this? Let's go. I mean, why am I so concerned with this idea of a teacher? It's because I think there's a link between psychoanalysis and Go where the teacher can be assimilated to the position of the analyst, in the sense that a good teacher is not just going to teach you good moves. They're going to position themselves just out of reach of you, not too far, just out of reach, so that you think you're about to grasp them. And as you're about to grasp them, they're just a little bit elusive and you can't really get them. But in doing so, you made a step forward. That's, I think, what a good teacher in Go is. And that's something that it's really about what we've been talking about. You should bother your opponent. The analyst should bother their patient. It's an example from the practice of Lacan, who is known as the most controversial French psychoanalyst, probably the most controversial analyst everyone confounded. There's a story of a patient who, every time she'd have a session with him, he'd leave the door just a little bit open. He wouldn't close the door completely. So the people in the waiting room might hear what she was saying. She didn't say anything for a while, and then one day she just, she lays down on the couch and she says, "Why are you leaving the door open?" And he just answers, "Because you have a problem with doors." That's where the teacher in Go should lead you. Why are you always attaching milestones? Because you don't like contact. Okay.
As we wrap up here, any final thoughts? I mean, we've had quite a far-ranging conversation that's gone more philosophical, but any thoughts before we close?
Yeah, I would really like to see that side of Go being explored a bit more. I think in the West, we tend to see Go as a cognitive activity and a technological activity because it's so linked to the development of AI and machine learning. And in Asia, the psychoanalysis has not taken root in the same way as in the West. I think in Asia, they have a much more spiritual vision of Go, but not very influenced by a psychological or psychoanalytical type of thinking. And this is what I'd love to see for the future. I'd love to see these two aspects come together in a sort of westernized, I don't know, but psychoanalyticized vision of Go.
Well, Timothy, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
To take a quick pause between interviews, I wanted to thank all of our individual contributors to the show. It means a great deal. I also want to mention the sponsors of this episode. The first sponsor of the episode is AI Sensei. Get your games analyzed with their advanced AI for free and take your Go to the next level. Go to ai-sensei.com. Go Magic is also a sponsor of the episode. You can go to their website and find all manner of different tutorials, Go problems, learn all different aspects, as well as capture all the special things about the game through this great website. Check them out at gomagic.org. Baduk Pop is also a sponsor of the episode. They have over 4,500 Go problems, 3.5 million user accounts, and 27 million games played on their app. You can go to download the app at the App Store or at badukpop.com. That's BADUKPOP.com. The final sponsor of our episode is Smart Go One. Smart Go is a complete app for the game of Go. It's available in the App Store on iPhone, iPad, Mac, and the Go books are also available in EPUB file format for other devices. On the online Go server forums, I was able to come across somebody through another person in the community that said, hey, you should talk to Dr. Arthur Mary. He is a French psychiatrist who wrote a book about Go and psychiatry and treating patients and some of the therapeutic benefits that can come from using the game of Go. Of course, it was very interesting to hear that. I reached out and Dr. Arthur Mary was great. We found a time that worked. And so we delved into some really interesting topics. Again, similar to my conversation with Timothy Tamim, some things that I never even would have thought of. And so I really hope you are enlightened by the conversation with Dr. Mary. Let's go right into it now. I'm just going to actually go to the title of your book, which I think loosely translates to The Game of Go, A Royal Path to the Unconscious. And there was a nice summary about your book and about the concepts of Go and how they could provide some benefit around therapy. In that summary, it references how Freud famously identified dreams as this quote unquote royal road to the unconscious. And perhaps Go and the game of Go can help us better understand the unconscious. Let me stop there and understand if I have any of that correct or if that is wrong.
It's totally correct. This title is, how to say it, a wink to Freud's work around dreams. So for him, he considered dreams like a riddle somehow. And in this book, I made this hypothesis that a Go game is somehow a riddle. Of course, very different than a dream, because it's not a material made of images, sounds, impressions, and so on. But there is some kind of otherness, just like in a dream. When I dream, I meet something about myself that is not exactly myself, that I feel it's some otherness. And in the game of Go, of course, there is an otherness. There is an opponent. There is another player. But I can also meet something of myself within my own game, within my own style. I think all Go players know this sensation of surprise in front of his own style. What I wanted to do with this book is to show what I'm doing with my patients, because I play Go a lot, maybe the third of my work time, with patients in a psychiatry hospital.
Wow.
Of course, the games we play are not complicated games. They are not high-level games. Most of the patients I play with are real beginners. But they made me discover that this game is vaster than I first thought. At the beginning, I was thinking that the deeper I get in the game, the stronger I get in the game, the deepest understanding of this mysterious game I would find. But with these games, with patients, with beginners, I understand another aspect of the game, at least I think so, which lay in a very simple, somehow superficial way around the Goban, somewhere around the Goban. Maybe it's a bit mysterious. I'm thinking about a woman I played with in this hospital. When I mentioned to my colleagues, this patient, I think it would be a good idea to play Go with her. And all my colleagues said, no, come on, she's, how to say, deficitary psychotic.
Okay.
Some jargon to say she's this is too intellectual for her, and so on. I refused this, and I show her the rules. She understand the rules. She understood it. And we started to play every morning in my office with my coffee. And we play every morning a very simple game. I remember one day she put a stone outside the Goban. I remember that my hand wanted to correct this move.
Yeah, of course.
And I stopped my hand. I was really curious about what does it mean. So I told her, you are outside the Goban.
Yes.
How? And instead of telling her, no, the stones must go on the Goban, we played on my desk without any lines. And it was really funny, actually. And I was really curious, what is happening? Okay, she's teaching me that, of course, she felt bad this day because of some family problem, let's say.
Sure.
But she taught me that, okay, we can play Go outside the Goban. It's much vaster.
Wow. Did you find that in this process with playing games every day or many days with this woman, did you find that you either learned more about her state of mind and how she was feeling, or did you find that it was providing some sort of relief or therapy for what she was dealing with that day? What was your sense?
You know, Edward Hopper is a professional painter, and
Okay.
he said one day, if I could say it with words, I would not be painting. And I think a lot of Go players might say,
Feel
if I could
this.
say with words, I would not
Be playing Go.
express something on the Go. And
Yeah.
so
Interesting.
I see the game of Go in psychotherapy as a way to express things that would not be easily, or maybe not at all, sayable, expressible with words. And somehow those expressions below the words are somehow kind of irrational. You can express some of the human irrationality, some very archaic feelings or experiencing, like when you have a group of stones and you feel very afraid to lose it. And,
Yes.
and when it happens, it might be a catastrophe that you're a real nightmare. And,
Yes.
and this has some origins in our very archaic life.
I think that your table of contents is really interesting and revealing, because some of the ways that your titles are translated provoke a lot of interesting ideas. You start with fuseki, the Japanese word for the opening of the game, and you're laying out the rules, right? This is how the game works. These are the rules. And then, the next section, the translation, the drive on a platter. And then it says, Joseki do not make waves. So do you have a sense for what that might mean? Joseki do not make waves?
Yes. In this section, in this chapter, I make the Freudian concept of drive. Among other drives, he proposed two important drives, the life drive and the death drive.
Okay.
I use a metaphor in this chapter, the metaphor of the sea. When you see waves, it's a kind of disorder. Then life drive brings some disorder. Life is full of disorder. Our psychic expressivity does not make the word simpler. But the death drive is more something related to this Indian concept of nirvana, calm. The death is the radical calmness. So when you follow a Joseki, of course there is some life drive, because you are making choices. You are not totally submissive under the Joseki. But it does not make waves. It's calm. If the Joseki is somehow equal for both opponents, it's before the waves. The waves come after the Joseki. In
Got
that
it.
sense, it brings life drives.
You have the next subtitle in this section talking about the concept of a stone or a group being put into Atari, and then this fear of losing something. So I think you just spoke about it. And I know that when I play Go, and I do have that group, and all of a sudden it's under attack, there's absolutely a lot of things that are happening internally. Can you help us understand how this might connect back to Freudian concepts?
Well, first of all, in the book, I explained that it will never be possible to build, let's say, a dictionary of this event on the Goban means this event. Exactly like Freud.
Sure.
Freud said there will never be a dictionary of dreams. This thing means that.
And that means like you will never perfectly understand. Is that sort of what it means?
No, I think the meaning will be totally different for every player. The experience of Atari will not be the same for you, for me, for another player. For most of the games, when I play black, there is something in me that believes that I am black. But black is only the stone. The stones represent me on the Goban. I am not the stones, of course. The stones represent me. The same is for my name. The signifier we use I believe I'm almost delusional when I say I am Arthur. I am not Arthur.
Interesting.
Arthur is just, it's just a name. And when I play Go, there is this distance between the stones and me. I believe the stones are me, but I know that it's only a game and there is a distance. And when something happened to my stones, I know that there is a distance. This might sound obvious for most of the players, but for some psychotic players, this is not obvious at all. I played with a girl, a young patient, who really felt in her body when I cut in her border.
Yes, cut. Yep, sure.
And it was not, for her, Go was not a metaphor. There was no distance between her stones and herself. I often have some students doing internships, and when they begin to play Go with patients, I always say, just be careful. Those frontiers, those borders, their territories may not be only a metaphor of themselves, but maybe really themselves when you're playing with them. So just be tender with the borders of someone before the cut.
If we can move on to the next section of your book, you call it the discourse of Go. And it looks like you are talking about things such as the origins of the game. You use this term divine placed in there, which makes me think about concepts of whether it's nirvana or Buddhism. Tell us more about that.
Okay. This part is probably the most boring one. I wrote it with, let's say, Lacan. It was a French psychoanalyst, very keen on language. So it's, let's say, it's the linguistic part of the book.
Okay.
You can meet some players who learn lessons from a game, who said, oh, I understood something with that game. I remember when Lee Sedol replayed with AlphaGo a bit before he retired. He said, oh, no, I know why I'm playing Go after having played a game with AlphaGo. If he had said so after a psychoanalysis session, it would be obvious for me. Okay, I know what happened. I know why
I learned something.
But
right.
It was not getting out of a psychoanalyst office. It was getting out from a game of Go. I found a very ancient Tibetan text about a young boy who is asking himself if he should or not kill his father 1,000 years ago. And before taking his decision, his mother gave him a goban and asked him, okay, play the black stones with right hand and white stones with left hand. And according to what happened on the goban, you'll decide if you kill your father or not. I don't remember the story, but the father was a criminal or something like this. There was a reason. But what is important for me is this non-verbal game made of no language, no words. It's no matter if there is no words, you can project some meanings on it. And we tend to do this often. And this was important for me for the therapeutic aspect of Go. When I play with patients, I'm very interested in asking them, if you should put some meaning on that game, what would you say? The human mind is really at ease in projecting meanings on everything. And most of the patients have very interesting thoughts about the games we play.
You probably have many, many, many examples, but are there any specific examples that you remember that were unique or special?
Yesterday, a woman was playing for the first time in the Go workshop I created in that hospital. It was her first time and she was a bit perplexed. She did not understand well, why do I have to play Go with a psychologist? And she started to play with another patient. This patient on the Goban is very aggressive, the second one. She's very efficient. She wants to win. And they play together. And at a time, the first I was talking about, she managed to build a territory. She was happy with this. And the other one started to build a territory inside her. The patient I'm talking about, she's here for anorexia.
Okay.
So the question of what is inside my body, what is inside my territory, is her question. And she said, for the first time, I realized I'm being captured from the inside.
Whoa.
It was her first game in this workshop. She played only 2 games. She knows barely the rules. And for her, it was an event. Okay, what I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing during this game is about what I'm living and what bring me in hospital.
Wow. So it was an opportunity. It was almost a revelation to her. It was something like this, what we say in English, like this aha moment, like the light bulb blink turns on. And I see your point. It's that you're looking at something that is a reflection of you, or you see something, you see yourself in this game, and you are doing so in a way that's not with words and it's not with speaking. It's a different form of expression that helps you better understand something inside yourself. That's a very powerful example.
The Lacanian way of practicing psychoanalysis often consists in interrupting the session in a signifying moment, in a haha moment. Let's imagine the patient said something embarrassing and immediately the session stopped. The patient say, oh no, my God, I did not want to say this. No. And the psychoanalyst say, no, okay, I understand, but let's talk about this tomorrow. And to stop on that particular aha moment. And I do the same with Go, with patients. When there is a strong tension on the Goban, I interrupt the game at that moment. Most of the time, the patient don't appreciate that. My hypothesis is that the non-verbal tension on the Goban will need to find its path in the words that will be pronounced in that moment, in that tension moment on the Goban. I hope they will be interesting. Most of the time they are, because the player is so focused on this game. There is this tension. He or she wants to know what will happen. If you interrupt here, you will meet someone in a certain tension. And this is, I think, the good moment to ask him or her, what is happening now inside of you? Tell me, say the words that come
to mind. Right. I can see how that could be a very powerful form of understanding what's happening inside. There's almost a sense of like suspension, right? Everything's being frozen, and whatever you're feeling in that moment, you as the psychoanalyst or the psychiatrist are trying to understand what's happening. Moving a little bit further along, the next section is called Time in Go. You talk about this concept of the backstage of the game. You know, are we even or odd? Does even or odd refer to the komi or the compensation that's provided point-wise, or is it some other sense of equality in the game between black and the white stones?
I'm not sure the automatic translation was accurate. But it's a before taste, the nigiri practice.
Nigiri, yes. Okay, so it's about nigiri.
It was only a before taste. I think the aftertaste is more interesting.
So wait, so nigiri, what are you thinking when you say the aftertaste is more interesting? What does that mean?
There is a story, a myth that psychoanalysts appreciated a lot, maybe still nowadays. It was the story, the legend of Oedipus. In that story, there is a story of nigiri. There is a nigiri moment. The story, so I won't tell all the story,
Sure.
but in that story, at a moment, Oedipus turns back to his homeland. He met an old man. And at that time, in the ancient Greece, you must be polite with an old man, let's say a sensei, somehow.
Okay, sure.
And when you meet an old man on the road, and this road you cannot cross at the same time, one must be the first and the second will cross the road after. And the old man, since he was the first in life, must be the first on the road. We cannot play this road at the same time, one after the other. But this old man was Laios, the father of Oedipus. So there was a problem because Oedipus wanted to have the sente.
The initiative,
wanted-
make the first
Yeah.
move.
He wanted to be the first on the road. So he killed Laios. He killed his father without knowing he was killing his father. I think every time we are taking the sente, we are somehow repeating this story of killing the old one. I mean it in a very structural way. It's almost biological. The parents came first. And in the game of Go, just like many other games, you cannot play at the same time. There must be one first and one after.
I see.
But at the contrary of many other games, I don't know other games where the fight for the sente is so decisive, is so meaningful.
Right. Because if you keep sente, I mean, that's a huge determinant in whether you win the game.
That's true, even if sometimes it might be strategically interesting to voluntarily play Gote.
That's an interesting concept.
Okay, I'm not a strong Go player, so maybe this must be checked by a sensei. But when I want to play in a therapeutic way, most of my moves are Gote with patience because it's one good way to let space for the expressivity of the other, to let him have the sente. I really prefer. One of my difficulties with this, the patients I play with, often they ask me, but you're playing for real. You're not pretending.
Right.
I hope we are fighting for real. And I really won't. I don't want to lose. I'm not losing on purpose. One patient years ago asked me, but okay, you told me to win, I have to have more points than you. Okay, I understand that. But what is the aim of the game? And this is a deep question. We all know the goal of the game, having points, okay. But what is the aim of the game is a different answer for everyone. Maybe for every game. Maybe the aim of the game I'm going to play this evening is to meet someone. I want to know his Go style. I want to know him. But maybe it's for narcissistic reasons, because I want to beat him and I want to be the best, and because this is a contest, so I want to win.
Right.
Or maybe I want to teach something. This might be my aim, or to learn something from someone. And when I play during my work times, my aim is to produce some therapeutic effects. My goal is to have points on the Goban, but my aim is elsewhere. And I don't know the aim of my patients.
Do you find that you need to directly talk with them about what you're doing, or do you try to stay quiet and not reveal what your aim is?
Most of the time, there is no need to reveal this because somehow it is obvious. They are hospitalized. But sometimes it's important to remind them that, of course, we are playing, but let's not forget why we meet.
You have a section that we already talked about a little bit with AlphaGo. So when you think about something like AlphaGo and this concept of a artificial intelligence playing quote unquote creative moves or new moves that have never been seen before by top professional players, and then you go all the way, it says from AlphaGo to Buddhist enlightenment, which is a very different concept. And I think in some of the things I've read about Buddhist enlightenment and connecting to Go is more these concepts of emptiness or nothingness, or perhaps connectivity, connection to everyone. There are some interesting translations in this subsection from ChatGPT. So what does AlphaGo owe to Freud? Could you just give us a little sense for some of the things that you struggle with or discuss in the book?
Yeah. AlphaGo is nobody.
You mean in the
human.
sense that AlphaGo does not exist, or you mean it's no person? Like it's not
It's
a person?
not person. It's not human. But in another way, it's at least a human projection. And he plays a human game. So we meet AlphaGo, we meet the algorithm on a human ground, the Goban. in a language, in a proto-language, in an archaic language, in a non-verbal language that has some effects, some inner effects on us humans. In the book, I use the concept of subjective destitution. It's not a subject. In this almost caricatural way of thinking what a psychoanalyst must be, you can imagine almost a non-person, a nobody, with no personality, no revealing, nothing about himself, neutral, a joseki. So neutral, a death drive. This is a caricature, of course. But AlphaGo has no personality. He's the ideal psychoanalyst. No personality at all. At the same time, he sends some moves, some totally neutral moves, only directed by its algorithmic efficiency and answering perfectly to our inputs. Remember what I say about Lee Sedol. Nevertheless, AlphaGo was not human. It had some effects on at least one player, Lee Sedol.
Absolutely, sure.
So I don't know what exactly Lee Sedol met by playing with him, but for sure he met something or someone. Maybe himself, maybe a part of himself, maybe a big emptiness.
Maybe it was terrifying to see nothing on the other side. That's what I remember understanding in the documentary about the experience, the AlphaGo, is that he would play and you can't look AlphaGo in their eyes. So you're saying, what are the psychoanalytic implications of Lee Sedol's experience with this algorithmic, system?
Yeah, in my profession, we are very interested by what is happening with artificial intelligence, like ChatGPT and the other one. For some of my colleagues, they are afraid, and I am among the afraid ones. And
they will take your job, right?
You may have heard very sad stories of people committing suicide after a discussion with an algorithm. Because
I can imagine.
for
Yeah.
some story, the one guy felt in love with the algorithm.
I heard this, yes, yesterday.
Of course, the algorithm is not human, but it has some effects because it is meeting us on our usual playground language. I don't know if I chat with ChatGPT and he said he used precisely a precise word that I heard when I was a child has some effects on me. Of course, ChatGPT has no idea what he's doing, but it may have important effects on me.
So if you think about that back to using Go as a therapy, I mean, you're also looking at trigger points from certain game situations and
Yes.
something that a patient will see inside their own lives. Is that fair?
This woman I told
Yes.
about her borders, her frontiers.
Right. Yes.
I met her when I was working in private office years ago. And she was a high-level chess player. But I met her on the Goban.
Did she know Go?
No, she did not, but she understood it in 1 second.
Very quickly. Okay.
And it was difficult for her to talk with me about the real reasons she was asking my help. So I say, let's take our time. We have time. Maybe in 2, 5, 10 sessions, I'm okay. I'm free to hear. When you want to tell, I will be here to hear it. And we play Go. And at a moment, she interrupted the game, and she showed me something on the Goban, and she asked me, "But here, can you cut me?" And I say, maybe you should try. So I give her my stones. Just try different scenarios and try. And she arrived at this conclusion that whatever the way I could try, it's not possible to cut her.
I see.
She was right, but nevertheless, she put a protective stone on that part of the frontier.
Yeah.
And then she stopped moving totally. She began to cry. And she told me, "No, I can't tell you." And she told me a very horrible story that she has been cut. literally cut by knives by an aggressor, and he eventually let her for dead
Wow. Oh my
in a
God.
room.
Oh, wow.
But you remember what I say about the tension, the non-verbal tension of the Goban that may transform on a language tension. She literally transformed what was happening on the Goban into a story that she could tell. By doing so, she taught me how important it is to hear the Goban, to be attentive to what the other player is playing. And I think when I play not with therapeutic aims, but just to play with friends, and I am attentive, most probably because of this woman that showed that even in a very innocent question, can you cut me here? There was some very important things at stake.
It just shows you how much our brains will take different actions or visual situations and we will make meaning, like you said, we will make meaning out of them. And that sometimes there can be such a profound effect of just such a simple moment. And she sees something so differently. That's really powerful.
One may have the temptation to correct her move. Remember, she put an unnecessary protective stone.
Right. She over-defended.
Yeah, she over-defended, and the temptation might be to correct her move and say, no, it's no need to overprotect. Just take back this move. No, it's important to respect even this mistake is very important. So I am always respectful of mistakes on the go.
And in some ways, it shows the humanity. It shows the creativity of everyone. You have to sort of accept everything that's on the board in a way. So you finished this book, was it in June of 2024?
The book is written since 2020.
Okay.
But I could publish it only last year, 2024, for some traumatic reasons. So I'm going to say intimate words about myself. I had many different deep reasons to play Go in my life. But the last one was because I lost my younger sister 10 years ago. And for years, my issue was to know in how many parts was her body. Let's say it was my problem in life. And I play Go at that time because it was comforting, it was helping. And I could only send the book to the publisher when the trial began. But this, I realized the link I'm telling now, I could realize it only after it was published, when I had the book between my hands and I realized how much I was talking about the body of the players. And eventually some psychotic players who have no sense of unity of their body. When I wrote the book, of course, I was not thinking that there was a connection, only afterwards.
Between the trauma you experienced with your sister and with the book and your patients.
Yes.
And when you say trial, do you mean the experience, or do you mean was there a actual criminal trial?
Yeah, a criminal trial.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Wow.
Maybe I can tell a more light reason I was playing Go at the first time. I'm French, but from Reunion Island. It's a former French colony in the Indian Ocean near Madagascar.
Oh, wow.
And I arrived in France when I was 18 for my studies to go to the university. So I was without my parents, alone. And there I met other people from Reunion Island, mainly Asian people. And they introduced me to the game when I was 18. They showed me the game of Go. So I became highly compulsive player. And this was not good for my studies. But
Sure.
and I put all the day long stones on the board. But what I have not said is the small town I come from is called, in French, Plateau Caillou, which means literally stone board. I was very nostalgic of my country. I
Oh,
miss a lot Plateau Caillou,
wow.
and I made no connection that I was being hosted by the Goban and the Stones.
So you had no concept, you were not aware that there was that connection until much later.
No, much later, I went to a psychoanalyst and I was talking on the couch about how wonderful the game of Go is.
Yeah.
And then he told me, "Can you
Wait a
tell me
second.
again the name where you come from?" Huh?
That's an incredible connection. So again, that shows the potential for the unconscious. Arthur, I really want to thank you for your time. This has been incredible.
I thank you.
That is going to wrap it up for the episode. I hope you gained some interesting insights and are thinking about the game a little bit differently after these conversations. Thank you for listening. This is All Things Go.